Okay, so we will continue with the study of the blood vessels. We've talked about how the blood is being pumped by the heart, and the fact is that when it's pumped into blood vessels. We have a drawing over here to the left that shows some rather large blood vessels, all of which come out of the top of the heart, except for one, number 2. And I know that it looks like number 12 comes out of the bottom of the heart, but I'll explain that later on. So we have these rather large blood vessels that divide into two groups, and we need a definition, a couple of definitions. One is for the word artery. Now, if you ask most people what an artery is, they will tell you it carries oxygenated blood, and this is not true, and we'll go into that at the end of this video clip. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. That's our definition for an artery. Blood is moving away from the heart. This would mean that vein, the definition for vein will be it has to be moving toward the heart because the blood has to get back to the heart. So we have these two, arteries and veins, and we will go into why we can't talk about oxygen levels in this definition again at the end of this clip. Okay, so let's pretend we are a red blood cell. We're down here in the left ventricle, and we're going to be ejected through the aortic valve into the aortic arch. That's number 1. And as we leave full of oxygen, we are either going to go up and to the right, we could go up to the head, or we could go over here to the right shoulder, or we could go again to the head, or over here to the left shoulder. And if we didn't go up, some of us are going to go down. We're going to go behind the heart here with the dashes to the aorta. Number 12, the aorta. So you can see now that number 12 actually connects with number 1. They're connected, so that really doesn't touch the heart. It just travels behind the heart. The red blood cells will travel through smaller and smaller tubes until they get to capillaries. And at that point, the tubes are so small that we red blood cells will have to line up single file to pass through. That's how narrow they are. And at this point, we will drop off our oxygen, we'll pick up CO2, and now we need to go back to the heart. So of course, now that we're traveling back to the heart, we'll be in veins and we'll be deoxygenated. Just by the way, we will be deoxygenated. And let's say we came from the toe, dropped off our oxygen at the right big toe, and now we're coming back. We will come back on number 2 here, the inferior vena cava or vena cava, either way. If we were coming from the right middle finger, we would come back on this tube like this, and again we would end up in the same place, which is the right atrium. We said earlier that this is the left ventricle. Okay, let's say if we came from the left middle finger, we would be coming from over here, coming back, dropping off our CO2 into the lungs. If we came back from the head, we would come back on one of these two tubes called the jugular veins. So far, everything we have seen tells us that veins carry deoxygenated blood back to the right atrium, and arteries carry oxygenated blood out to the body. But let's take a look at number 11 here. Number 11 is called the left pulmonary artery. It goes over here to the lungs. This is where the blood will pick up oxygen. So it's traveling from the right ventricle, which would be somewhere around right here, and it would travel through the pulmonic valve, which would be about right here, and it would go off to the left lung. If it didn't go to the left lung, it would go this way, back behind all of this, and over to number 3, which is the right pulmonary artery. Now think about this. Is that blood oxygenated or not? And if you said it's not oxygenated, you're right. That's why it's going to the lungs, but it's traveling in an artery. So we have arterial blood that is deoxygenated. And this is why we can't say arteries carry oxygenated blood. Most of the time they do, but in the pulmonic system, the system that goes from the right ventricle to the left atrium, it's reversed and the arteries are deoxygenated. But this blood does have to get back to the heart, and it would come back, of course, traveling to the heart, it would come back on or in veins. It would come back from here, would travel behind the heart to the left atrium, or it would come from the left lung and connect over here, and these would be the pulmonic veins, which aren't shown. But again, this shows you why we can't say arteries carry oxygenated blood and veins carry deoxygenated blood. That's true 90% of the time, but from the right ventricle out to the lungs and back to the left atrium, things are reversed, and the arteries carry the deoxygenated blood and the veins carry the oxygenated blood. Now, as for memorizing these things to the right, you should know number 1, 2, and 3, and then 11 and 12. You should memorize those, have an understanding, because this is much more pertinent to our course. The other ones wouldn't be a bad idea to learn, but they're not nearly as important as numbers 1, 2, 3, 11, and 12.